The reason Islam makes worse societies is because they have a doctrine for cousin marriage. Now, notice Daniel didn't say, no, you can't fuck your first cousin and marry her. No. He didn't say that because he probably believes that you should. He probably believes it's fine. He probably believes something about like it protects inheritance or something like this, right?
Christians are also at the mercy of the same kind of IQ fetishists who want to transform the human race. Wake up, Andrew, wake up. Stop this stupid argument. 30 more minutes of Andrew saying that Muslims are dumb. Okay, that's great. I'll try to be more substantive than that. So just listen to this.
Thank you so much for your kindness. Thank you guys for being here. If you guys aren't excited for this one, I don't know what's going to do it. I am thrilled for this debate. It's going to blow your minds. It's going to melt faces off. So thank you for being here. Buckle up. We are getting started. So, as you know, the debate is Christianity or Islam, which is best for society. Before we jump into that, though, what I want to do is introduce our sponsor who helps make this possible, as these events are very difficult to pull off. But we are proud to have as our sponsor Main First Project, as they, similar to modern day debate, care about free speech and fair debates. We're thrilled to have Zach. It's been a great time spending time with you today. I can tell you, if you guys, folks, reach out to Zach. Very cool guy, very fun to talk to. Zach, I want to say thank you for being our sponsor. Main First Project works on fighting for conservatism in New England and beyond. Thank you very much, Zach, for being with us tonight. I want you to share a little bit of
Here we go, Crucible crew. Who's ready for this banger event? There we go. I'm loving this energy. Loving this energy. Now you have to listen to me for a second here. So Main First Project, we're taking the fight to these leftists. Yes. Yeah. In a state where they're originating, they're the incubator for all these leftist policies throughout this country. If you want to fight back and stem the tide, you need to support Main First Project. Facts. Go to mainfirstproject.org and please support us. Let's get on with this debate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Zach, for that. We're going to jump into this indeed. I'm going to introduce our speakers. First, Daniel Hakikachu. He is an American Muslim commentator and Harvard grad who debates religion and politics. He is best known for his YouTube channel, The Muslim Skeptic, where he critiques modernity from a traditionalist Islamic perspective. Please welcome Daniel Hakikachu. Also, defending Christianity tonight, Andrew Wilson runs the popular YouTube channel, The Crucible, which focuses on politics, news, debates, and interviews, and also runs Verbal Combat, a comprehensive debate course found at debateuniversity.com. Give it up for Andrew Wilson. We're going to step. We're going to jump. We're going to jump right back. We're going to jump right into it with with Daniel's opening statement. Daniel, the floor is all yours for your 15-minute opener. Thanks for being with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just 1 second. Let me set this up. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Just a quick note. I want this to be a civil debate because right now there's a massive Zionist campaign to generate as much hostility between Muslims and Christians as possible. If I can say something nice about Andrew, I respect him for not being a shill for Israel. I think we can be civil, but also very critical of each other's religions without it turning vicious. The only ones who benefit from a Muslim-Christian civil war right now is Israel, which is stoking hate so that they can continue their genocide of both Muslim and Christian Palestinians while they bleed America dry. Let's keep that larger context in mind. So the first slide, which is best for society, Islam or Christianity? Next slide. The answer depends on which standard we use to judge, traditional or secular liberal values. Traditional values include belief in God, prayer, marriage, and gender roles, opposition to degeneracy, and commitment to nation and shared culture. Secular liberal values include individual freedom, gender equality, sexual autonomy, scientific progress, and economic advancement. If we judge by traditional values, Islam beats Christianity hands down. If we judge by secular liberal values, Christianity comes out on top. The reason for this is that Christianity, since the Enlightenment, has been reformed and adopted liberal values while eroding traditional ones. This is because Christianity is more open to evolving in a way that Islam isn't. My opponent, Andrew Wilson, claims to be a traditional Christian, but we'll see if he'll debate like a traditional Christian or like a blue-haired libtard. If he debates as a traditional Christian, he should defend Christianity. He should defend Christianity as understood before modern liberal reforms. For example, even though he's Orthodox, I doubt he'll defend Byzantine Orthodox norms, such as theocratic monarchy, the monarch's authority to define church doctrine, slavery, book bans and speech restrictions, death penalties for blasphemy, apostasy, and pagan worship, restrictions and bans on loaning money with interest, minimum marriage age of 12, bans on divorce, mandatory veiling of women with unveiled women labeled as prostitutes, lashes for fornicators, punishing married adulterers by cutting off noses or sewing them into sacks and burning them alive, execution for homosexual acts, limits on Jews through bans on Jewish proselytizing and building new synagogues. If we look at a timeline of Christianity, for 1700 years, Christianity upheld its pre-modern norms of slavery, female subordination, monarchy, punishments for blasphemy, executions for adultery. After the Enlightenment, Christians began reforming their religion to match secular values, and that liberalizing process continues today with the acceptance of homosexuality, LGBT rights, and modern feminism. Even though he's a conservative, Andrew already accepts huge chunks of this liberal reform. He's fine with abolishing slavery, rejecting monarchy, ending blasphemy, and adultery punishments. His conservatism simply draws an arbitrary line at a later stage, roughly 1950s America. But libtard progressives follow that same reform trajectory, just a few stages or steps further. Andrew isn't defending traditional Christianity, he's defending his preferred arbitrary stopping point on a progressive path he already agrees with. In other words, the difference between him and the libtards is quantitative, not qualitative. Just a dispute over where to halt the same ongoing cucking to secular liberalism. So Andrew's conservatism is not principled, it's arbitrary. Given this, I predict Andrew will debate like a blue-haired libtard today and use a pro-liberal strategy against Islam. Because, again, Christianity can't beat Islam on traditional values for the simple reason that Islam isn't amenable to reform the way Christianity is. So he'll likely attack Islam exactly like a blue-haired alphabet person would by calling Islam backwards on marriage, gender roles, and scientific and economic progress. But if Andrew attacks Islam using secular liberal values, he faces a dilemma. Because tomorrow he's debating an atheist on whether Christianity or secular liberalism is better for society. So any pro-liberal standard that Andrew uses to judge Islam today, tomorrow that same liberal standard can be used by his atheist opponent to judge Christianity. For example, if he says Christianity is better than Islam because it gives women more rights and promotes more scientific progress and health, the atheist can argue that secular liberalism does even more of those things. Andrew knows this, so against the atheist tomorrow, he'll likely revert back to a traditional Christian stance, highlighting issues like LGBT, incest, and low birth rates. I'm not singling out Andrew. All Christian debaters code switch. They know Christianity isn't as based as Islam on traditional values, nor as progressive as secularism on liberal values. Christianity is stuck in the middle. between traditionalism and secularism. So to win against either Islam or secularism, Christians have no choice but to code switch depending on who they're debating. Putting aside this conceptual problem with Christian apologetics, how do we know that Islam is better for society than Christianity? Again, it depends on what values we adopt. Muslim and Christians generally subscribe to traditional values. In fact, all humans, due to biology, inherently value things like belief in a creator, marriage, family, and community. So let's see whether Islam or Christianity is better at promoting these things in society using the abundance of empirical data available. Let's start with a bird's eye view using the World Values Survey, a global project measuring beliefs, values, and cultural changes in over 100 countries. Their World Cultural Map from 2023 groups countries by religion. Protestant European countries are yellow, Orthodox is red, European Catholics are green, Latin America in light blue, and Islamic countries in gray. On the x-axis, countries that value individual self-expression and autonomy are further right on the graph. On the y-axis, countries that are more secular are higher up. The ones that have more traditional values are lower. So you can see in the bottom left, there are the Islamic countries that are more traditional, whereas the Christian countries are more secular and value individual autonomy. How about belief in God? Muslim countries show higher religiosity and belief in God than Christian ones. For example, Pew Research asked people in different countries if they believe in God. For nearly all the Muslim countries, the number was 100%, to such an extent that Pew concluded that nearly all Muslims surveyed believe in God. Another Pew data set shows Muslim countries, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, at the top of global belief rankings, while Christian countries are split with Kenya, Ghana, and the Philippines high, but the US, Spain, and France low. What about religiosity? On this map, all Muslim countries are dark purple, showing the largest share of religious followers. Christian countries, except Latin America, are much lower, like the US, Europe, and Russia. Pew studied how important religion is to people's lives. And for Muslim countries, they're dark yellow, indicating 80 to 100% of people saying religion is very important to them, while most Christian countries are much lower in gray and blue. The 2024 Integrated Values Survey confirms this. In majority Muslim countries like Indonesia and Egypt, over 97% say religion is very important, whereas in Christian countries like Mexico, the US, Russia, and Germany, religion matters far less. Another key metric is religious switching. Pew shows Christianity in red has the largest net loss of followers, while Islam in green has the highest net gain from conversions. I think you're pretty behind on the slides. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Now let's look at family and gender roles. Muslim societies have higher rates of marriage than Christian societies. Notice how the percentage of married individuals of both Muslim women and men, indicated by the red and blue arrows, is higher than Christians, since Christians are more likely to delay or forego marriage. We can also look at divorce laws. Christian countries mostly allow no-fault divorce, while Muslim countries often have fault-based divorce or other limitations on women. When it comes to fertility, Pew Research shows that Muslims are at 2.9 globally, whereas Christians are at 2.6. And even when you break it down by region, Muslims in Europe, the Asia Pacific, and Sub-Saharan Africa have more children than their Christian counterparts. Muslims also have the largest families by household size, at 6.4 members per household compared to 4.5 for Christians. Due to both higher birth rate and higher net conversions, Islam is the fastest growing religion projected to meet and exceed the Christian population in 25 to 50 years. How about sexual behaviors? Research in American Sociological Review show Muslims, due to religious conviction, are less likely to have premarital or extramarital sex than Christians. Some Christians might claim this is only due to self-reporting bias because Muslims are less likely to admit to engaging in these behaviors. But we can account for this by benchmarking against other variables like medical abortions and death rate from HIV/AIDS, which directly correlate with extramarital sex. Data shows abortion rates are highest in Christian regions, and death from AIDS are highest in Christian countries in Africa, Russia, and Latin America, but lowest in North Africa, the Middle East, and other Muslim regions. Regarding acceptance of homosexuality, Pew shows Christian countries are far more accepting, even after controlling for economic factors. Regarding attitudes towards gender equality, World Values Survey asks whether men make better leaders than women, do men have more of a right to a job than women, etc. They took the answers to these questions to create a grading system which shows that Muslims are far below Christians. Now, if we were a bunch of liberal simps, we would count this in favor of the Christians. But since we're all red-pilled, we recognize that the Muslim countries are based and the Christians are simping. Same when it comes to other gender equality metrics. Christian countries, whether in the West or Latin America, Russia, value gender equality more than Muslims. That's a bad thing for many reasons. Looking at other societal health metrics, research shows Christian countries have much higher rates of alcohol and drug abuse. Controlling for economic differences, Muslim countries have lower homicide rates than Christian countries. Stephen Fish's book, Are Muslims Distinctive?, shows per capita murder rates are significantly lower in Muslim countries. Female homicide rates are also lower. Rates of rape and sexual violence are likewise lower in Muslim countries and highest in Christian countries. Multiple studies show that the suicide rate for Muslims is much lower than Christians. These stats show how Islam outperforms Christianity in upholding religion, marriage, family, and community, making Islam better for society. We can examine why Islam consistently excels in these areas. First, Muslims are much more attached to religion than Christians because Islam is more compelling and intuitive than Christianity. For example, monotheism is easier to grasp than the Trinity. Islam is also more historically preserved. Carbon dating confirms that the Quran Muslims read today traces to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By contrast, the Bible has evolved through layers of editing and reflects the theology of Paul far more than the teachings of Jesus. Islam also better preserves traditional life and family through a clear, comprehensive system of Sharia. Christianity, by contrast, offers only broad, highly malleable principles that different Christian groups interpret in conflicting and often contradictory ways. A Christian rebuttal could be that even if Islam excels at traditional values, it falls short on secular ones like individual freedom, self-expression, and scientific or economic progress. Christianity, they could argue, wins overall because it blends the best of both worlds, preserving core morals while still enabling the modern achievements of the Christian West: more freedom, science, technology, and higher GDP. This argument has fundamental problems, however. First, is Western prosperity due to Christianity or secularism? For example, how much of Western greatness comes from pre-Christian traditions like Greece and Rome? Furthermore, if Christianity drives prosperity, why haven't the oldest Christian nations like Ethiopia and Armenia matched the West's success? Likewise, recently Christianized societies like El Salvador and the Philippines have no comparable prosperity. Finally, why do more devoutly Christian societies have higher poverty and violent crime than more secularized Christian ones? Therefore, it's far from clear that Christianity is the secret sauce to scientific and economic progress. But there's a deeper problem. Mixing traditional and secular values never works. It's like mixing paint and paint thinner. Whenever societies try to combine traditional and secular values get abandoned. This is actually what has happened in the West, which was deeply Christian 200 years ago, but now has become the center of atheism and secular decay. This didn't happen overnight. This happened because Christians 150 years ago tried to mix traditional Christianity with the secular idea of progress. This happens because traditional values are based on duties. Preserving religion requires imposing duties on people to worship. Preserving family requires imposing duties limiting sexual freedom and providing care for children and the elderly. Preserving a nation requires duties to uphold shared norms, honor national symbols, or limit immigration. So preserving traditional values necessitates all these duties. The problem is duties are hard work requiring personal sacrifice. Because of this, duties necessarily restrict individual liberties while also generating inequality and discrimination. This is a problem for secular liberalism, which strives to free people burdened by duties. So the secular liberal system gradually eliminates duties to maximize individual freedom. This is done through two means: moral progress and scientific progress. Moral progress means, for example, liberating women by telling them they don't have a moral duty to serve their husbands. Scientific progress means inventing AI companies for the elderly so that little Bobby doesn't have to spend time talking to grandpa. Usually we think of progress as a good thing, but clearly progress can seriously damage society because if you get rid of duties, this will weaken institutions of religion, family, and nation. The decay has been ongoing in the West since the 18th century, when liberal ideology kick-started moral and scientific progress. Consequently, yes, the West has the highest GDP, but religion, family, and nation are weak, and people live as atomized individuals pursuing endless pleasure through tech-driven consumption. If you watch tech elites shaping Western society, you'll notice their transhumanist vision, Neuralink AI, etc. This is the logical endpoint of unchecked moral and scientific progress. The question is, which religion can stop this? Christianity has already adopted liberal secularism. And reformed itself by those standards. Even the most conservative Christians, like Andrew, won't take the radical steps needed to turn back the clock 200 years and stop the inevitable transhumanist future. The most radical thing that Andrew calls for is banning OnlyFans, maybe putting Christians in charge of America's government so that they can ban abortion, trans kids, and introduce public prayer. This won't stop, this won't slow down, let alone stop the freight train speeding humanity toward destruction. Islam, by contrast, offers the Sharia, comprehensive moral and legal, a comprehensive moral and legal framework that governs every dimension of life, individual conduct, family structure, community obligations, and social order. It does not merely tweak the secular liberal system, it represents a fundamentally different paradigm, and because Islam preserves a duty-based morality rather than dissolving it, it retains the internal resources to resist the liberal atomization and technological dehumanization.
Thank you very much for that opening from Daniel. I've got the timer set for you, Andrew, on your first word.
Good job, man. The fun thing about debate is you get to actually get in the mind of your opponent. What? What happened? Oh. The fun thing about debate is you get to actually get in the mind of your opponent. You get to study and dissect the things that they say and believe. After watching Daniel for hours, a few things became obvious. The first, he's a far better Muslim apologist than I am a Christian apologist, that's for sure. But he's far weaker on politics than myself and the nature of the world. The second is that he's an above-average debater, but he ain't quite God tier. See, if I were Daniel and fighting from his worldview, I'd point out Christianity is fractured and weak, that Christianity is totally incapable of fighting back against the degeneracy of our time. Its impotence has led to social categories of degeneracy at levels nobody could have predicted, especially with the advent of the internet. I would point out Muslim societies don't work that way, that Muslims have feminism and degens under control, that everything in modern-day Christians in the West are fighting for against degeneracy, Islam has already achieved in their lands. That's what I would do if I were Daniel. When talking about which is better for society, Islam or Christianity, this becomes a powerful argument. But I'd go a step further if I were Daniel. I'd also say my opponent will argue like an atheist progressive. That Andrew Wilson, the guy who promotes anti-feminist and egalitarian doctrine, is going to sit up here and act like an egalitarian progressive and cry about Islam being mean to the women and cry about Islam not being very nice to the gays. Well, you were fucking wrong. Sadly for Daniel, while this tactic would normally be effective against a sewing circle Christian, I'm not part of that cast, sir. Now, let me get into my argument for why Christianity makes better societies than Islam, and it's pretty simple. Islamic societies breed an inbred population. Next slide, please. Muslim inbreeding has been occurring at a high rate for about 1,400 years since the early Islamic period, encompassing most of the land still occupied by Islam today. It spread from the 8th to the 15th century, moved into Persia, North Africa, South Asia, where it remains and has created some of the dumbest fucking human beings on planet Earth. The most common type of inbreeding is first cousin marriage. The rates of first cousin marriage in comparison to Christian nations is staggeringly high, even in comparison to regions occupied by Arab Christians. When a nation has both Christians and Muslims, Muslims are often double or higher than Christians. Example, India, Lebanon. Next slide, please. Muslim inbreeding. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Pakistan at 65%. 65%. Meaning, more likely than not, you're having sex with your cousin, and if you're not, you're the weird one. Okay? For the low IQ members of MDD, that means these people are more likely than not having sex with their aunts or uncles' children. Whew, Saudi Arabia, 50 to 58%, with an average 76 IQ. Who would have thunk it? UAE, 54%, 82 IQ. The crown jewel of the Arab world, you are more likely than not to be banging your first cousin. Iran, 40%. 80 IQ. Yemen, 45%, 62.9 IQ. Qatar, 30%, 80.8 IQ. Now, we're going to continue, right? Oman, 36%, 78. Syria, 39%, 74 IQ. Turkey, 25%, 86 IQ. Jordan, 32%, 80 IQ. Egypt, 32%, 76 IQ. It goes on and on and on, and it just never gets better. Next slide, please. Thank you. Compared to Christian countries, let's take a look. Usually less than 1%. Now, I wonder why Christians build better societies, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's keep going. We want to pull up the slide here, moving right along. As countries become more Christian, inbreeding declines. Right? We can see this from church intervention in Spain, 20 to 30% post-Reconquista. Catholic Church banned cousin marriages for commoners. Papal dispensations sold for royals. Italy, similar high rates in the medieval period. The church enforced bans over the century. France, high medieval. Canon law prohibited marriage within 4 degrees of relation. Modern Western Europe, it's not just the cultural norm, but let me tell you exactly how much of a cultural norm it is. Even in European nations where marrying your first cousin is legal, they don't do it because of the ecclesiology. Isn't that wild? Africa shows the more Christians and less Muslim the societies become, the better they do. Let's just take a look at Nigeria. Okay, we can go down the list here. 50% Nigeria, 20 to 30% first cousin marriage. Isn't that crazy? Now let's move right on down. You can see South Africa, Muslim 1.5%, very low on to negligible in the national prevalence of cousin fucking. Whew. You can look at the list. It's pretty comprehensive. We can continue to go, right? The bottom 20 least productive sub-Saharan African countries. Wouldn't you know it? They're all Muslim. 99% Muslim in Somalia. Whew, very high. 60% first cousins. Anybody ever hear a joke about Somalian IQ? Let's look over at Niger, 99% Muslim, 60% cousin marriage. First cousin marriage. Let's take a look at Muslims. When we're taking a look at Malil, it's a 90% population, high cousin marriage. In other words, everywhere Islam goes, the IQ goes like this because they all are fucking their cousins. Not joking. Go over to the next slide, please. I want to show you this is a famous case. These are called the rat people of Pakistan. It's a condition known as microphalics. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I have no idea. And it's caused by excessive inbreeding. When's the last time you went to a European country and saw that? You don't see it. Inbreed, yeah. Now, hang on. Next slide, please. As we continue, let's just take a look here at the casual link between cousin humping and low IQ. Basically, there's increased homozygosity, I think that's how it's pronounced, for deleterious recessive genes, and it is the strongest causal link for why the IQs are so low. Genetic risk. Inbreeding raises the chances of inheriting 2 copies of harmful recessive genes. Brain development impact. Harmful genes can impair neurodevelopment, reducing cognitive potential. IQ reduction evidence. First cousin offspring lose 3 to 4 points on average, and closer inbreeding can cause larger deficits. They've been at it for 1,400 years. Whew. Higher prevalence equals greater risk. Populations with widespread cousin marriage show more individuals with lower cognitive performance. Generational compounding over successful generations. Harmful genes accumulate. One of the big Muslim copes you'll hear from Daniel tonight. Well, it's only 1.5% for genetic problems for normal people who aren't having sex with their first cousin. Well, that's true. He says it only doubles to 3%. That's very low. No, it compounds. See, if you hump your first cousin and then those kids hump their first cousin and their kids are et cetera, et cetera, et cetera down the line, guess what happens to your IQ? Guess what? You'll never guess. Anybody got a guess? It goes down. The negative consequences of a low IQ. 80 IQ versus 100 IQ person. Income 50 to 70% lower. Welfare dependency 4 to 6 times higher. Literacy less than 10% at less than 85 IQ. Obesity up almost 2 times. Chronic disease up to almost 2.5 times. Life expectancy less than 70 IQ. Or 75 IQ, down 5 to 10 years. Why? Because, well, you might just look down the barrel of that shotgun when you're cleaning it. Moving over, arrests and incarcerations 3 to 8 times higher. Violent offenses 4 to 6 times higher. Teen pregnancy 3 times higher. Child neglect and abuse 3 to 7 times higher. Intergenerational poverty 4 to 6 times. Almost every study available shows that IQ entering the low 80s, Muslim countries, affects nearly every aspect of life in a negative way. Economic prospects, criminality, mental, physical health, happiness metrics, and both at the individual and societal level. In fact, study shows that when a country has a sub-90 IQ average, they find it difficult to have basic innovation, infrastructure, professional class, and other basic needs of a functional society. Is that sounding familiar yet? Now, here's the thing that's interesting. Modern societies don't require everyone to be a genius. Just look at me. But they do rely on a distribution of abilities, and you can see their roles below. 70 to 85, basic job, practical skills, routine labor. That's Islam. That's almost every Islamic nation, ladies and gentlemen, 70 to 85. Sometimes up to 2 standard deviations lower. Whew. 85 to 100 would be skilled labor administrative support, 100 to 115 professional middle management, 115 to 130 engineer, scientist, doctors, specialized roles, the things they desperately need that they get from us. 130 plus innovation, leadership, high-level problem solving. Next slide, please. Inbreeding itself over generations causes massively compounds that lead to negative consequences. And you can see the risk curve there. You see how the genetic defects increase every single generation. Moving over, I just want to point this out on the last slide. Islam took an ethnic people that were at the heart of being the top of civilization. And through generations of Islam and inbreeding has turned them into the lowest IQ, some of the stupidest people on planet Earth. Literally. You think I'm being mean. I'm not. They're literally some of the stupidest people on planet Earth. Everywhere Islam goes, inbreeding increases and societies become worse. Where Christianity goes, inbreeding decreases, so societies do better in almost every material way. Let's just point out here, as I wrap this up. One second. So it's clear here that my argument summarized, though this isn't its entirety, is that Islam creates huge societies with large swaths of people with IQs so collectively low, they would be considered developmentally challenged, borderline retarded here in the West. Not kidding. Due to this side effect, force doctrine becomes the order of the day. Because the technological difference in capabilities of each people group is so vastly different, think Apollo mission compared to Starship Enterprise, Islam must literally bank on the benevolence of Christians to not wipe them off the face of planet Earth. They are basically, the feminists of the East, totally reliant on the goodwill and benevolence of global Christianity, not to just not exterminate them. Okay? And take their resources, always appealing to the mightier force for their existence and the benevolence of that very people group who Daniel today is arguing doesn't make better societies, which is a laughable proposition. Even absent the degeneracy of a people group must be able to competently defend itself or bank on the benevolence of the people group, which can. And almost everybody is going to prefer the society that can. Imagine the irony here of arguing against the very Christians you find inadequate morally, yet bank on their moral benevolence to not wipe your low IQ fucking asses off the face of planet Earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opening as well. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our friends at Maine First Project for sponsoring DebateCon 6, as they also believe in the values of free speech and fair debate. Maine First Project is fighting for conservatism in New England and beyond, so check out their link in the description box below. We are going to jump into the 5-minute rebuttals. Just a quick reminder, folks, please be sure your phones are on silent, and also please do refrain from recording or streaming any footage other than if it's TikTok length, that's fine. But we're going to kick it into 5-minute rebuttals. First with Daniel, the floor is all yours.
So this falls exactly into what I predicted. You argued like a libtard. This falls into exactly what I predicted. You argued like a libtard. How? You're saying that success is on the basis of IQ. Well, how are you going to argue tomorrow when you debate with an atheist that Christian IQ is higher than secular atheist IQ? In fact, the atheist IQ is much higher than Christian IQ. So your entire standard for judging Islam applies just as much to Christianity. And tomorrow when you're debating the atheist, you'll have to concede that your Christian religion is associated or correlated with lower IQ. Therefore, atheism or secularism is better for society because it raises IQ. So that's one point. Point number 2, where in the Bible does it restrict cousin marriage? This, as you acknowledged, is a later papal decree. It was not a part of Jesus' teachings. Jesus didn't come out and say, hey, if you want to have a successful society...
Those of you in the audience, I do want to ask you to keep it down so we can hear the speaker.
Jesus didn't say, oh, hey, if you want success and you want to have a prosperous society, you shouldn't marry your cousin. Jesus never had this apparently essential Christian teaching that is the key to success on earth. That's your whole argument against Islam, and it's found nowhere in Jesus' teachings. It's found nowhere in the early church fathers' teachings. This is something that came later. And also, when it was decreed that cousin marriage is considered to be incest, it wasn't on the basis of IQ. This is something that you have adopted from who? From atheists, from secularists, from those who are doing secular science to discover these medical problems or IQ levels. So your entire standard for judging Islam is not a Christian standard, it's not a biblical standard, it's not an Orthodox church standard. This is coming only from atheists, from atheistic science. Second of all, if IQ is such end-all, be-all, Christian societies, if you bring up a country list of countries by IQ, many Christian countries are on the bottom there. I don't know if you consider them to be true Christians because they're not white, but they're also at 80 IQ, 70 IQ. Look at sub-Saharan Africa, look at Latin America, look at the Philippines. It's also comparable with Muslim countries. Do you consider them to be Christians or not? Also, go back to the Middle Ages. IQ was much lower in the Middle Ages in Christian societies. Why that has changed is because of the Flynn effect. IQ has increased globally across the world because of the Flynn effect. So if you have a problem, again, with lower IQ, look at medieval or Middle Age Christian societies. And also, here's another big problem. IQ is also linked with race. So if you want to prioritize high IQ, you should discourage interbreeding between races. Why should higher average IQ from Asians or whites or Jews or whatever race that has a higher average IQ, Christianity encourages or allows interbreeding between the races? That will result in a lower IQ. So you should be against that because that's going to, over time, lower the average IQ of society. So that should be something that you need to oppose to be consistent. Interracial marriage or interracial breeding should be contrary to your point or contrary to your position. Also, yeah, I mean, I'm just shocked that your entire argument about why Christianity is better than Islam is a cousin marriage argument. That's like shocking because it just works so far against you. So if IQ is the end-all be-all of what makes a society good, then Christianity loses to atheism and secularism. Like, case closed. So and many Christian societies are low IQ as in the same way as certain Muslim countries. The thing about the difference between me and you is my values are based on marriage, family, traditional values of that nature, not atheistic values of IQ and intelligence.
We're going to jump into Andrew's rebuttal as well. The timer is set for you. 5 minutes, Andrew.
Libtard value. Don't fuck your first cousin. Libtard. Let me just point out that Daniel Kikikachu didn't actually rebut any of my arguments. Not a single one. My argument was simple, and I'll repeat it here again. The argument is that your society has to rely on the benevolence of mind to exist because of your general IQ. You see, remember how I told you the 70 to 85 is basic jobs, practical skills, routine labor? That's most Muslim societies, sir. It doesn't matter if you point out 2 exceptions to the rule. Even in those societies in which Christians have a lower IQ, guess what you find? Their interbreeding rates are going down, and when you compare them to the same Arab population where they're inbreeding, that section of the population, the IQ is always lower. So what's my argument here? My argument is that Christian societies are better because they lower inbreeding, which collectively takes your IQ so far down the rabbit trail that you end up having to beg the higher IQ individuals for protection from them. You have to bank on their benevolence. Imagine this guy is banking on the benevolence of Christians who have a high enough IQ to basically eradicate all of the Middle East. There's nothing they can do about it. And they're banking on that benevolence while telling you all that you're immoral. You're immoral. This is not an atheist argument. Far and away. Well, the argument here is based around what it is that we're discussing. And what are we discussing? Which makes for better societies, right? Christianity or Islam? How can you claim you have better societies, sir, when half of your societies are so inbred, their IQs are like borderline retarded? How? How could this possibly be of benefit? And you know what they do when they go to other countries? They keep doing it. They keep doing it. Now he says, well, if you value IQ more than all other values, who said anything about that? The debate is not about that. It's about which makes for better societies. Now, which society would you rather live in? Would you rather live in a society of donkey pull cart, right? Donkey pull cart, because we're not smart enough to make car. We're not smart enough to even have infrastructure because we're at 70 IQ, 80 IQ, borderline retarded individuals. That's a society. Who's moving there? Who's moving? Nobody. They're all moving here. Why? Because they want the societies that Christians have. By the way, let me point a couple other things out. No, Christians are not stupid. Yes, their IQs are much higher, much, much higher. Even in non-white areas, they're much higher, sir, because they don't inbreed. And it's very frowned upon. Go figure. And interestingly enough, let me just point this out, that Christians have a much smarter enemy. Much smarter enemy. You're right, they do have a high IQ. You need high IQ people to combat that with these values. Islam can make no inroads. They don't have the technology. They can't mount an invasion. They can't even make a fucking power plant. Right? How are they going to do that? Daniel, what's your big plan? His big plan is to bank on the fact that there's enough suicidal empathy in the West to keep on importing Muslims. That's about it. That's it. That could be his only plan. These people can't make armies. That requires massive organization and mobilization. You think that these people could ever attack the West? That's a laughable prospect. He started with Zionism. He has 10 million Jews in his backyard. They can't do shit about it. Nothing. 1 billion versus 10 million, they can't do anything. They launched their entire missile payload. It does nothing because of the IQ difference in these regions. The IQ difference is so wide that if they even tried to collectivize, it would still be done, and they know it. And they can't collectivize anyway because it requires a high enough IQ to follow orders. Okay? So that's my argument. My argument basically is very simple. You have to have a high enough IQ to have a society to begin with. Christians make it by lowering everywhere they go. You fucking your family members. My God. Back to you, Daniel.
With that, we have 60 minutes of open dialogue, though. The open dialogue is broken into 90-second segments, just to be sure there's no interruptions. Daniel, we're ready for you for your first 90 seconds.
Sure. So he said that I didn't address his argument that Muslims rely on Christian benevolence because Christians have such high IQ that they could just technologically eliminate Muslims whenever they wanted. Well, Christians are at the mercy of atheists. Christians are at the mercy of higher IQ atheists. Christians are at the mercy of higher IQ Ashkenazi Jews. Christians are at the mercy of China and Asia. If you want to make a might makes right argument, then we're in the same boat, buddy. Muslims and Christians are closer together in the same boat compared to these other groups. So this is a self-defeating argument. Also, AI. AI is going to eliminate this so-called advantage of IQ. AI is making it irrelevant. I don't know why you're laughing. AI is going to eliminate a biological IQ difference between different races, between different religions, between different countries. So that's a big problem for this kind of IQ argument. You're talking about people moving to the higher IQ West. Well, you have Christians from Latin America migrating en masse in the millions, 10 million over the past 5 years, coming into the United States. They're coming from Christian countries to the U.S. So you think that they're coming because it's a Christian country, or is it because of economic opportunity? And many people actually prefer to live in these countries. You have people in the U.S. being passport pros and living in South America because they're tired of this shithole United States, unfortunately, what it's become, despite the high IQ.
90 seconds.
Why is that, Andrew? Explain it.
Switch over to Andrew. I want to remind you folks, please do self-regulate so that we don't have difficulty hearing the speaker. With that, Andrew, the floor is yours.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can make that argument. There are some high IQ Christian nations that move to even higher IQ Christian nations, but none of them move to Muslim nations. You're not getting anybody to move over there, Daniel, because you don't have civilizations. You can't create civilizations. He says AI is going to come along and solve it all. You got to be smart enough to use the AI, Daniel. You have to be smart enough to use the AI. Remember, 70 to 85, that's your societies. 70 to 85. Basic jobs, practical skill, routine labor. Doesn't sound like a bunch of automation, robot building, AI savvy individuals to me, Daniel. He points out the ideas of IQ. Remember, we have to have a basic minimum for civilization, about 98 to 100 to 115. They don't have it. That's the distinction in our civilizations. And it's because of one value. Christians outlaw screwing your own family members. That's it. Simple. They outlawed. It's no good. And even in places where it's legal, we must be adhering to the ecclesiology here, Daniel, because where it's legal, people still ain't banging their cousins. That's your societies, the ones that you build. And what you have built is a collective of some of the dumbest people on planet Earth who are at the mercy of Christians. And don't try to cope and say, no, they're at the mercy of the atheists. Give me a break. Everybody is at the mercy right now of Western nations and Western Christians, which are in them. And that includes Eastern Europe, by the way. So this is all cope. He hasn't refuted any of the arguments. How can he possibly say these low IQ societies which Islam creates are better than the ones Christians do on this one principle? I want to hear it.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so you don't need to know how AI works to be able to operate it. That's why it's a evening of the playing field. I don't know if anyone here has used AI, but you don't actually need to know how to program AI to be able to use it. This is something that is very obvious, how AI is going to make IQ differences really irrelevant in the future, and this is what all of the futurists are saying. Second of all, you have Christians in more religious Christian countries going to less religious Christian countries. You have, again, the sub-Saharan Africans, you have the Latin Americans who are Christian going into more secularized nations. So this is, again, an argument for secularism, not for Christianity. You say that there are no Christians moving to Muslim countries. What about all the Christians in Africa, in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia that go to Dubai, that go to the UAE, that go to Saudi? That is a counterexample to your really bizarre claim. You also, again, look at what makes a society great. I think that's the overarching point that is so hard to believe that a Christian would make this argument. I value marriage. I value children. I value having big families. I value belief in God. I believe church attendance or like religious attendance to places of worship. These are the things that I find valuable, and I showed you how within Muslim countries, all of these things are higher, despite having a lower IQ, which I'll grant you. Did you say over or 10 seconds?
No, you're good. That was 90 seconds. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, so this is really funny. Imagine the irony of saying this. Well, Christians are moving to more secular countries. So are Muslims. Well, what are you talking about? The mass migration. No one's bitching about the mass migration of the Christians right now, are they, to Christian nations? They're bitching about it the other way around. Really interesting, too. He still hasn't refuted the argument. Notice he does everything we get in the. He says, we really value marriage to our first cousins. To our first cousins, we think it's great. It's fantastic. We really value it. It's like, no, that's not a value of mine, sir. And I don't think that that's secular to say. It's not a value of Christians to not want to have sex with their family members. And by the way, can you please explain, even though I've asked you many times, how it could be possible, sir, that you create better societies than Christians where everywhere Christians go based on their ecclesiology, their ecclesiastic authority, and the fact that they're Christians, inbreeding goes down, making sure that the IQ at least sits somewhere around can function. Can you please, for the love of all that is good, I don't even care if you Google it at this point, just contend with the argument. How are you making a better society with inbreeding and your Muslim values, which over 1,400 years have produced the dumbest societies on planet Earth?
Wait, let me ask the audience a question here. Oh, sorry. Let me ask the audience a question.
Appeal to the audience.
Are there electric cars being developed in Latin America? Are there new AI technologies being developed in Brazil and Argentina? Are they being developed in sub-Saharan Africa, these Christian countries? Because they don't have cousin marriage, do they, Andrew? So why aren't they developing all of these technologies, these amazing technologies, AI, nuclear weapons, fighter jets? I didn't see Brazil or Honduras producing any fighter jets, Andrew. Is it because they don't have cousin marriage? Why? They should be having this brain-blasting IQ in all these Christian countries. Why is that not the case? If Christianity is the secret sauce, Andrew, then tell me why these countries don't have those technologies. Explain it. Because the reason, I'll give you a spoiler alert, because it's not Christianity. It's not Christianity and cousin marriage that causes this discrepancy. And if you're so high IQ in the United States, how are you not able to figure out birth rate, fertility rate? Why are these countries going extinct? Why is Europe going extinct? Why is Christianity, these Christian countries in Europe the population is on a nosedive despite the high IQ? They can't even figure out how to reproduce at replacement levels. Gee, I guess IQ leads to extinction because it's correlated, right? The higher IQ you have, the lower the fertility rate. So it seems like the more Christianity you have, the more chances you have of going extinct, Andrew. Explain that for us.
Well, if that were the case, you're in big trouble. Because if it's the case that your IQ stays the same and then collectively secularist IQ goes up, what's to stop them from wiping all of you out and you can't do anything about it? Your argument, unfortunately, destroys you. When you say, well, wait a second, what about these South American nations, right? Yes, they're way more advanced than your nations. Way more. Not even in the same universe more advanced than your nations. Yes. The truth of the matter is that the reason Islam creates worse societies, we can bicker about theology, right? Hey, I'm sure Daniel could probably get me on some points there, but you can't bicker on the facts. And he hasn't contended with the argument still. He's asked me a bunch of questions. Did you actually hear an argument, anybody? Because there isn't an argument. The reason Islam makes worse societies is because they have a doctrine for cousin marriage. Now, notice Daniel didn't say, no, you can't fuck your first cousin and marry her. No. He didn't say that because he probably believes that you should. He probably believes it's fine. He probably believes something about like it protects inheritance or something like this, right? The thing is, though, is like, can we please get an argument for how a society that doesn't at least have 100 IQ so we can have middle management isn't better than, well, donkey pull cart? That's what I want to know. And please, for the love of God, sir, when you say it's not because of Christianity, the entire historical record disagrees with you. When pagans were at 20 to 30%, guess what? It was Christians who brought that down.
90 seconds.
And by the way, in all of the Muslim shared nations with Christians and Muslims, they're always lower IQ than the Christians because they fuck their cousins.
And time. We'll go over to Daniel, 90 seconds as well.
Again, throughout Christian history, you had sub 100 IQ. Throughout Christian history. It's only because of the Flynn effect in recent centuries that you have this change. So all of the criticisms that you're applying to Islam apply to your past civilization. How did you have a Christian civilization with sub 100 IQ, Andrew? Was the Byzantine Empire a S-hole? They had sub 100 IQ. How did they have a civilization without having positive 100 IQ? You can't explain that. You can have a beautiful, expansive civilization and empire with sub 100 IQ because there's other values that are significant to human existence. Values like marriage, family, God, worshiping God. You don't need to be a positive 100 IQ genius to be able to love and be devoted to God. I think that is actually more of the Christian message than this kind of IQ chauvinism that you're presenting. This doesn't seem Christian at all. This really doesn't seem Christian. You keep talking about like donkeys pulling carts. Go to the Philippines, bro. They're Christians. Go to the Philippines. Go to some of these African countries. Go to Botswana, Christian country. They have donkeys pulling. So apparently their Christianity and their lack of cousin marriage is not helping them. So this is a really bizarre argument, and all of you can laugh and chuckle it and laugh it up, but it doesn't change how stupid this argument is. If you have, okay, if IQ is this end-all be-all of civilization, and the end-all be-all of progress, then why is the West going in a nosedive? All the things, Andrew, that you brilliantly, beautifully criticize about the West, the LGBTQ, the lack of marriage, that's happening in these non-cousin marriage countries. So clearly, having the highest IQ, so clearly IQ is not the end-all be-all.
Switch it over.
Let's take a look at the first straw man. Did I ever say IQ is the end-all be-all? No, of course not. Straw man still hasn't told us how Muslims build better civilizations when they produce 70 to 85 IQ individuals who are basically only suited for basic jobs. Okay, still hasn't told us that. He can't tell you. He can't tell you that these are better civilizations. The reason that he can't is because they're not. They're clearly not. And the thing that's really funny about this is, like, let's just grant it. Let's just grant that, just for a second, we'll just grant Daniel's argument. We'll just pretend, well, you know, it's okay to have a bunch of 80 IQ people who can't seem to get past primitive technology and are just day laborers. But you know what? We don't do anything degenerate. Fucking your cousin's degenerate, Daniel. That's degenerate. Yeah, maybe you don't have hookers and OnlyFans girls, but fucking your first cousin is degenerate. So by the way, and let me just point this out, and this is really, really important to point out, he has not made an argument about how they produce a better civilization. Only I have. My argument is simple and still stands unopposed. Where Christianity goes, incest decreases based on canon law. Where Islam goes, incest increases based on their canon law. Therefore, where Christians go, society gets better. Where Islam goes, it gets worse. An argument would sure be swell.
90 seconds, we'll switch it to Daniel.
No, I gave an argument that you failed to respond to. I said that Islam, when we look at the statistics, when we look at all these countries on these metrics of marriage, birth rate, household size, belief in God, conviction in God. I thought we were believers. Conviction in God is higher in Muslim countries. Holding on to your religious practice is more in Muslim countries. Look at the levels of drug abuse, alcohol abuse being lower in Muslim countries. These are all values that are good, and we see them associated with Islam, not Christianity. That was my argument. So you can't deny those statistics, so you keep claiming that I have no argument. I clearly do have an argument, and I refuted your argument. If IQ is the end-all be-all, your entire argument is on the basis of IQ. You haven't said, you just say, marrying your cousin, effing your cousin, that is degenerate. On the basis of what? It's not on the basis of your Bible. It's just a degree. Yeah, laugh it up. I
do want to make sure we can hear the speaker.
Laugh it up, okay? Because as I said, you are arguing on the basis of a decree that was made. What is the actual moral? Can you make a moral argument, Andrew? Other than, it lowers IQ? There are many things that lower IQ. Like I said, interbreeding with other races, interracial marriage results in lower IQ. So is that degenerate as well? Why can't you answer these questions, Andrew, instead of repeating, you don't have an argument. You haven't responded to my argument. Okay, yeah, you've said that 10 times. Respond to the points that I'm making.
Well, I don't. Here's the thing that's funny, right? The points that you're making are in question form. Question form is not an argument. They're questions, not arguments. Perhaps you should go to a higher IQ school. The point is here, and this is super important to point out, I have what's called an argument, which means I made an argument. That argument needs to be refuted. Now, I would be happy to sit here and answer all of your questions today, Daniel, but you requested specifically a forum where that's not the case, where instead we do 2-minute monologues, probably because I would tear you to pieces in a Socratic method, but I would have been happy to do that too. People always misjudge. They always seem to think, well, Andrew just steamrolls debates, and he's terrible at these long-form formal debates. It's where I fucking thrive. And let me just point this out. Has anybody heard an argument yet? He just says, well, there's better families and stuff. It's like, okay, but you need to give us a standard, an argument standard for why it would be that these have better societies than societies which can have, skilled labor and middle management at the very least. That's all I'm asking for. I'll concede. Hey, we've got some problems. We've got the OF, we've got the prostitution, we've got some pretty horrible things going on over here. And we have high IQ enemies that require high IQ enemies, right? And they're not getting it from Islam. So my question just is this again. It's very simple. How do you make societies that can even combat this to begin with when you basically live in the Stone Age in comparison with technological distinction? You live in the Stone Age. Islam will get AI. We already got AI. What are you talking about? So I just want an argument. That's it. I want to hear an argument for why Islamic nations are better than Christian nations based on the fact that they go, and everywhere they go, they increase cousin fucking and we don't, which lowers the collective IQ. I would actually like a refutation there at some point.
Okay, here is the argument. I'll put it in premise form so you can follow it. Take notes, Andrew. Premise 1. Okay, societies that encourage marriage, or religions that encourage better marriages, higher quality marriages, less being sluts, okay, less prostitution, societies that have bigger and more healthy families, societies that have more devotion to God, religions that encourage societies that are more cohesive, are standing for each other in a kind of nationalistic or communal way. That religion that encourages more of that is going to be better, is going to be a better religion. Premise 2, Islam does encourage all of those things that I've mentioned, and the stats I presented, that's premise 2. Therefore, conclusion, by deductive inference, Islam is a better religion than Christianity. That is the argument. The problem with your argument is that you say premise 1, societies that have higher IQ are going to be better. Premise 2, Christianity, because it bans cousin marriage, is going to lead to societies with higher IQ. Therefore, Christianity is better. My rebuttal of this dumb argument is that premise 1 is wrong. Premise 1 is a false premise. That higher IQ does not lead to better societies. And as proof, I pointed to the United States of America. I pointed to many Christian countries that have low IQ, and you haven't denounced those countries. I gave many reasons why your premise 1 is false. That is my rebuttal of your argument. Get it?
Yeah. Let's go through this premise at a time. First and foremost, the entailment of your argument would be that low IQ societies are better. It would be that lower IQ societies are actually better, Daniel, which is hilarious because, remember, you rejected that as being a false premise. P1, he says societies require higher quality marriages. They fuck their first cousins. How could that possibly be a higher quality marriage, Daniel? I reject premise 1. I'm saying your argument's not even sound. How can you have in any way, shape, or it's totally invalid. I reject it as even being a sound premise. How could this qualitatively be better to have genetic deficiencies compounded over 1,000 years? To the point where your civilization literally requires the benevolence of all other civilizations so that they just don't wipe you out because you're not technologically advanced to do anything about it. You're not technologically advanced. And by the way, when I say technology, I'm not just talking about like lasers and phasers and guns and things like that. Remember, things like philosophy, that's a technology, right? Things like language is technology. Things like social communications and businesses and infrastructure, these are technologies. You can't have these technologies when your IQ is 70 to 85. You can't. you need to have the administrative and skilled labor class, and that requires at least 85 to 100. Most of these places don't have it, but 100 to 115, that's pretty standard for these things. So it's like, look, how could you possibly say that the societies Christians build aren't better on a single principle, that we outlaw first cousin marriage? When you outlaw first cousin marriage, you see the collective IQ begin to increase, right? And you see that these technologies no longer unavailable. Technologies, medicines for children, things like this are now available. His argument, his entire argument is actually we should keep our society super low IQ, because if we keep them low IQ, well, they'll have more qualitative marriages and stuff. What? What?
We have to switch it over at 90 seconds. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, I didn't say having lower IQ means you'll have more marriage. You don't understand causality. So the question is, you had the vast majority of Christian history at sub 100 IQ. Your assumption, the premise that you're using, is that you have to have a over 100 IQ average in your society to build civilization and to be functional. But this is disproven by your own religious history. This is disproven by all of Christendom prior to 1800 or even 1900, the 1900s actually. So just like Christians could have civilization for 1900 years, Muslims have also had their civilizations that were also thriving, that also had conquest, that also had art, literature, poetry, all kinds of beautiful things that we as human beings value. It's not just IQ. You're taking this atheistic argument, which is baffling to me. Why you as a Christian would have this kind of IQ fetishism? You're not a white nationalist. IQ is not the end-all, be-all of human existence. I am happy, I'm fine with having a 90 average IQ country that abides by traditional values, that abides by whether they be Christian or Muslim. I actually prefer the low IQ Christian countries that value marriage. They don't have degeneracy. They don't have prostitution. I value those Christian countries even when they have a lower IQ, a 90 IQ, an 80 IQ. They're living beautiful lives. Yeah, you can make fun of them. Oh, they have donkeys pulling their carts. You can laugh, but they're living beautiful lives as Christians or as Muslims or any other religious group.
Well, I guess ignorance really is bliss.
Go on. That was a neat
slapping your dress.
So
look, let's point this out. Let's point this out. Let's point this out. Right? We just want to look. We haven't gotten personal with each other. We can go the rest of the debate. We both got a jab in. All right, that's fair. So here's the thing, though, right? This is still not a refutation of my argument. The historical standard is Christians had lower IQs back in the day. Yeah, and they didn't build modern civilization back in the day. Modern civilization requires professional middle management, 100 to 115 IQ, right? 85 to 100 for skilled labor. What they're talking about is just basic day laborers. These people are very low IQ. And by the way, I'm going to even make the claim that they're really choosing Islam anyway. They can't really think about it that hard, right? So the question becomes, right, as we're kind of diving into this, I just want to point out one more time, the argument is around a singular Christian principle. The singular Christian principle is that we're not allowed to marry our first cousins. That's in our ecclesiology. And I don't care if you're a Protestant, right? Almost no Protestants do this, right? No Catholics do this. Orthodox, this is forbidden as well. It's not that you couldn't find some sect somewhere, some small society somewhere which practices it. I'm sure that that's the case, but by and large and overwhelmingly it's not. With Islam, the opposite's true. By and large and overwhelmingly they do. So we're basing this on a singular principle, which is Christian, and that's what I want a refutation for. Why is marrying your first cousin for the purpose of building low IQ societies better than not doing that?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Again, it's not a causal relation. Islam doesn't mandate marrying your cousin. It's not like we're saying we want to keep IQ low, so marry your cousin. You keep getting the causal chain wrong about this. The second point that I want you to address is that when we look at IQ increasing, that is associated with more atheism. It is directly correlated with higher levels of atheism. The higher the IQ goes, the more people become atheists. This is a bad thing. I would assume that Christians would agree more atheism is a bad thing. I think that, yes, modern society is not all it's cracked up to be. I don't know if you guys have been looking around, but it seemed like I've felt, at least myself, that over the past 5 years especially, first with the pandemic and now everything that's happening in the world where World War III is about to break out, I think the modern world is a dystopia. I am waiting for, nuclear holocaust to destroy us all. I don't believe in this absolute value of modern society, and therefore I don't agree with your premise that high IQ is something valuable in and of itself. There are many things to point out being wrong or bad with high IQ. Again, I prefer to turn the clock back 200 years, where Christians had these traditional Christian societies. Muslims had traditional Muslim societies. Yeah, you didn't have a laptop. You didn't have internet. You didn't have cars. But guess what? You didn't have to worry about your wife having to, being in college and sleeping with every frat boy in the university, and you don't even know her history because of feminism. You have like LGBT degeneracy. You have elderly who are being shipped off to old folks' homes because there's not a strong family unit to take care of our own elderly. Children are being shipped off to daycares because there's not a strong family, strong marriage, mom at home with traditional roles to take care of the children. I prefer the low IQ. I prefer the low technology society.
We have to switch it over. Andrew, 90 seconds.
Can I just point this out? That none of those degenerate things that he just pointed out, which I agree with him, are the cause of IQ. I think you're having the problem with the causal link, sir. Let's point this out. And this is really important to point out. One more time, he didn't contend with the argument. The argument is, how do you make a superior society which is better for society? And you know what? All you've done right now is just argue this. Literally, I'm Daniel Kikikachu, and I prefer a low IQ society. That's his argument. Now, look, I did not expect you to bite the bullet that you would have a preference for a low IQ society, and therefore we should continue to have sex with our family members to achieve said low IQ society. But over here on the Christian side, well, we're just not willing to do that. So here's what's really important here to remember as the argument structure goes on. Daniel is literally giving a prescription at this point. He's giving you an ought. We ought to have dumb fucking people. That is his ought. My ought is different. My ought is you being intelligent does not restrict you from Christianity or Christian ethics. And we look at the IQ differentials in Christian nations, and we can see firsthand that that is true. So the thing is these are not mutually exclusive claims. When he says higher IQ leads to secularism, I could just as easily say higher IQ leads to Christianity, because all the Christians are way higher IQ. So the thing is like, which of those moral values do you not prefer? Which of them? Which of these? The Christians don't want degeneracy. They're fighting against it as well. The only reason you've made these successful inroads is because your enemies are so stupid that you can conquer them. And anytime you've tried to conquer the technologically advanced West, you can only do it via immigration, because you cannot collectivize to spare yourselves from the very nuclear war you're currently terrified of, because your people groups are too stupid.
Switch it over. Go ahead, Daniel.
How much time do we have, James, for this?
90.
To the back for this
back and
period.
forth. We have until it's about 30 more minutes.
Oh wow. Okay, that's good. 30 more minutes. So, 30 more minutes of Andrew saying that Muslims are dumb. Okay, that's great.
Well,
I'll try to be more substantive. I'll try to be more substantive than that. So just listen to this. Okay, so let's get into we have enough time to actually get into the IQ science. So first of all, Andrew, I'm not sure if you know this, but IQ is more highly correlated with race than it is with cousin marriage. So race, if you want to make this kind of IQ supremacist argument, then it will quickly become racial. And if you want to make that argument, just be very clear about it. Does Christianity, like your worldview, promote higher IQ races and everyone being at the mercy of those higher IQ races? You keep making a might makes right argument that, Muslims are at the mercy of us high IQ Christians. Okay, well then there are races that are higher IQ than others. So are the higher IQ races practicing benevolence by not wiping out the lower IQ races? That seems to be what your standard, what your morality actually entails pretty directly. So that please address the race issue.
I'll give you a chance to respond, Andrew, but I do want to be sure that this doesn't veer off topic too far.
Yeah, so I mean, that's really simple to address. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if that's a correlate. You know what else is a correlate? Fucking your first cousin. That's a correlate. That's a massive correlate for lowering IQ. It wouldn't matter if it was inherent, let's just say, for instance, that white people had higher IQs on average than the average Arab, right? Let's just say it for the sake of a hypothetical. It doesn't actually matter that much because we know one thing that's going to bring the IQ down: fucking your first cousin. So the thing is, since that is the case, and it's objectively the case, right, I can still make the prescriptor that your societies would be a lot better off if you had 85 to 100 skilled laborers, 100 to 115 IQ professionals, at least in middle management, at least. And you said it yourself. Right now you're terrified of nuclear war. We are terrified of nuclear war all around the nation, right, or all around Muslim nations. You're probably terrified of Zionists who are right in your own backyard. I get all of that, Daniel. But your people group aren't smart enough to defend themselves against these people. Christian nations are. We're smart enough to defend ourselves from people groups who want to wipe us out, like yours, right? So that's what's important here. The reason why you need to at least have an IQ that's above, I prefer lower IQ, 70 to 85, the reason you need that is because you need to be able to defend and protect yourself. You can't have these strong families he's talking about if you can't defend these strong families he's talking about. You can't have these great values that he's talking about if you can't defend your own people group because you're at the technological mercy of another people group simply because you won't restrict a single behavior. That sort of rigidity has destroyed these once great lands. He's right. They did have beautiful art. Nice. They did have beautiful culture. They had beautiful everything. And then Islam came along and allowed them to inbreed themselves into literal stupidity. So again, how do we not build these better cultures? I've refuted every argument you've had. All you do is make my argument for me.
Go to Daniel, 90 seconds.
Yes. Is it on? Okay. So then also the other factor, you didn't really address the race issue and the logic of your argument that we have to promote races that have high IQ, or we have to accept that higher IQ races can dominate the lower IQ races. Guess what? You want to talk about Israelis dominating Palestinians because of low IQ? Guess what? Which race actually has a representative that controls every member of Congress, like a handler? Like an AIPAC handler. What race are the AIPAC handlers that are controlling Congress? What race are they? Are they white Christians, actually, Andrew? Because it seems like 300 million Christians can't take care of just maybe a handful, 10 million of that one particular race that has a death grip over your country. Maybe address that, Andrew, the elephant in the room, and then tell me about IQ. The other point that I want to make is that do I have to spell it out?
Yes.
Yeah, they're called Jews. They're called Jews, Andrew. It's called, there are only 10 million of them. There are 10 million of them, but they seem
control
to have,
your whole region?
They seem to have a lot of control. Yeah, the thing about Israel is that they're able to dupe dumb Christians to support wars that are going to bankrupt America and cause America to really collapse so that they will have wars in the Middle East killing Muslim brown people because you Christians apparently, by your argument, Andrew, are too stupid to realize that they're being destroyed by this one particular group. Gee, that's really high. That's really brilliant, Andrew. So
actually, it is. Hang on, it's my turn.
I'm done. Okay.
Actually, it is really brilliant. Notice how Daniel is banking on the benevolence of Christians to save him from a higher IQ people group. Just like I said he would. Banking on the higher IQ benevolence of the higher IQ people group to save him from another higher IQ people group. Isn't that wild? It's almost like I predicted everything you'd say before you said it, because I did. This is very simple, right? His entire argument here that he's giving you right this second is, let's talk about how these higher IQ people groups are controlling you, the people I'm appealing to right now, to please stop them from dominating our entire region. 10 million against a billion. Dominated completely. and they have to appeal to somebody else to protect them because they don't have the requisite IQ or technology to protect themselves, and that's that. And that's why you have to have at least some sort of minimum IQ to have some sort of civilization which can at least contribute to your own nation's and people groups' protection. How could that be a worse standard? He wants to make it about race. He knows it's a red herring, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your race has the potentiality for, like, let's say 100 IQ. Let's just say that that was the case. It was just stagnant at that for some reason. Then why would we want to reduce it below that? Why? That's the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. So again, he makes my argument for me. Yes, he's appealing to the benevolency of Christians to save him and his people group. That should be the fucking... I wish you guys were smart enough to get it. If that was the case, that you understood this, right, that you're appealing to a smarter people group to save you from another people group. That's why you guys have to get your IQs collectively higher. And you just said you prefer lower IQ societies.
Switch to Daniel.
I didn't appeal to anyone's benevolence. I just pointed out how you're being used, how you're being treated like low IQ donkeys by a higher IQ race. That was my point. Like, I know you want to avoid acknowledging the point that I made very clearly, but the audience does. The audience understood what I was saying about that. So no, it's not about benevolence of Christians. Muslims don't need the benevolence of Christians to protect us. We've had a thriving civilization. And if Christians really want to win in this kind of argument, this kind of might makes right way, you're losing because of birth rates. Simple as. You're losing because Muslims are not only having more children, more people convert into Islam as opposed to leave it. Whereas with Christianity, there's a massive swell of apostasy, people leaving Christianity. For what religion? Partly Islam, but the much bigger proportion, they're converting to atheism. They're leaving Christianity. Why is that? Why? It's partly because of a secular education. So this is, maybe you need to appeal to the benevolence of the atheists, the Jews, these other non-Christians, because your religion is bleeding out. I showed the chart in terms of religious switching from Pew. Instead of grandstanding and trying to puff out your chest, address these real problems. Because there's not going to be a Christianity in 100 years if trends continue. And part of it is because of IQ. Ironically, part of it is because of IQ, because higher IQ is associated with higher atheism. So yeah, you're going to have people who will enjoy electric cars, maybe even flying cars and AI, but they're not going to believe in God.
90 seconds, we'll switch it over.
What's really interesting here is just pointing out that, once again, he's making the same exact appeal. The appeal, we're not making an appeal. We're not making an appeal. Islam has fantastic civilizations, as he's up here crying about how a nation of 10 million has enslaved all of them, according to him, right? How sophisticated can your civilization possibly be when 10 million people in the middle of a desert, right, are so technologically superior to the entirety of your civilization that even when your people groups have nuclear bombs, they don't feel threatened by it? This is a big problem. Again, this is not to talk about whether or not Jewish people are superior to Arab people, white people are superior to black people. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with one thing, which is the prompt. Which religion promotes a better society? Which religion produces better societies? And once again, I'm going to make this argument. It's pretty easy. If you think that people would have a preference, if you could ask them, which preference do you have? Do you have a preference to live in a society where 65% or more of the people are inbred? Or do you prefer to live in a society where that's not the case? And you're a Christian, I think you would answer yes. And I think if you were an honest Muslim, you'd answer yes too. And why? Well, it's because you still want medicine for your kids. You still want to be able to drive on roads. You still want to be able to have basic infrastructure, skilled laborers, professionals, things like this. And it's not that there's not many Muslims who are. There are. But there's not enough to meet the demand because they produce really stupid societies. And it's because of this reason. So it's like he just keeps on begging me to answer his questions about degeneracy, which has nothing to do with the debate. We're talking about which society is better.
Yeah, degeneracy has to do with society, bro. Degeneracy has a lot to do with society. It's like pretty much your entire platform talking about degeneracy ruining society. So like the technology that the West has achieved, you're saying that, well, look at all these Muslims, the biomass is at the mercy of all these technologies, the fighter jets, the nuclear weapons, whatever. But that technological progress is victimizing all of us. We're all a victim. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu. We all are facing this massive transhumanist behemoth, this hegemony, and it's threatening to destroy the human race. Do you see the interview that Peter Thiel did with the New York Times? And he's talking about like the Antichrist, and he's being asked by the interviewer, do you think the human race continuing is a good thing? And then Peter Thiel, he's this billionaire, actually paused for a second, and it took him a while to answer. And when he finally did answer, he said that, well, the human being in its current form, I don't know if that's something worth preserving. Because they're transhumanists. They want to see a future where human beings are bionic. You have genetic engineering to actually have tailor-made babies based on people's preferences. You have uploading the consciousness to the cloud with Neuralink, Elon Musk's Neuralink, all of these crazy technologies that are going to be imposed on us. Remember the whole thing, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Get in the pod, eat the bugs. Remember all of this agenda, especially after COVID, that they're rolling out. That's because of technology. That's because of high IQ people like Yuval Harari, this Jewish genius who is telling, hey, you don't need to own anything to be happy. We're just going to give you porn and we're going to give you drugs and you're going to live in the pod and that's going to be the future. That affects all of us. So it's not just Muslims who are the victims of this technological future. We are all victims of that dystopia.
Let us point out here that this is very important again, that everywhere Islam goes, regardless of the people group, the IQ goes down because of this. Let us also point out that that's not racial. That's every group. Every group that goes into anything to do with Islam, you end up with the IQ collectively lowering due to inbreeding. In order to oppose these very same technologies that he's proposing, transhumanism, things like that, you have to be able to make structured arguments, have reason. You have to be able to actually engage with these people. And if you can't do that, if it's the case that they have such a technocracy full of phaser guns, you got no fucking chance anyway. You have to at least have a high enough IQ to protect your people group from the very people you are claiming right now have a technological edge, which is Star Trek compared to the Apollo 13. So if that's the case, he still hasn't told you how having a low IQ is actually going to demonstratively help their people group at all oppose these types of technologies when the very secularists they claim are just gaining an IQ, because us dumb Christians, we just can't help it. We become secularists the second we get too smart, right? That's a big problem for them again. They would still need to value IQ being raised just enough to protect their people group, even if it was the case that Christians became secularists. Even if that was the case. So always his argument goes back to low IQ equals benevolency of other people group, because you can't defend your people groups. You can't defend your peoples. You can't do it. We have an ocean between us, and only one of us is capable of attacking the other. And that's because of the massive distinction in technological prowess and organizational skills, which you're going to find with intelligence. And it's not a thing which is valued by Islam by his own admission. How could we not have better societies based on that? How?
Switch it over.
Again, the benevolence argument. The only reason that you, Andrew, are able to have a platform on YouTube is that the benevolence of a bunch of atheist, God-hating secularists. That's the only reason you have a platform. They could ban you tomorrow. They say, yeah, this guy is flying too close to the sun. He's a little bit too hateful, and they ban you. Your entire ministry, your entire outreach is based on the benevolence of these God-hating atheists, people like Elon Musk, people like Peter Thiel. This is a problem for everyone who believes in God, not just Muslims. And I want everyone to recognize this fact. If IQ is the end-all, be-all, the way to maximize IQ is transhumanism. It's to actually genetically engineer human beings to have higher IQ, because IQ has a genetic basis, right? So the number one way to raise IQ is through genetic engineering, transhumanism. Tomorrow, if Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and the people who are controlling Christian countries and the globe really, if they say that, hey, we're going to eliminate Christianity because actually it leads to lower IQ and we have to adopt atheism, and they mandate that, and anyone who says that they believe in God or believe in Jesus is actually a radical terrorist who's spreading hate, and the Bible is full of hate and we have to ban this in order to reach our utopia, Okay, that's going to happen at the hands of atheists. So Christians are also at the mercy of the same kind of IQ fetishists who want to transform the human race. Wake up, Andrew, wake up. Stop this stupid argument.
If I ask you one question, I'll yield my time to you, and you can ask me one. Are you willing to answer it? How is it, Daniel, and I'll yield my time to you, that even if it's true that right now YouTube and these oligarchs can deplatform me tomorrow, and that is true, that me having a lower IQ is going to be somehow help me in that situation? That's my question. How is it that having lower collective IQs would help us against transhumanists, Daniel?
So the answer to my question has been this whole time that there are other values. So yeah, I might be stupid. I might be lower IQ than someone else, but I enjoy my life in other ways. I find value in,
dude, just answer the question.
That is the answer to your question. To worshiping God, going and spending time with my family, having a wife who loves me. I don't have to worry about her cheating on me or having this long history at college or whatever. Having children that actually respect me and who will take care of me in my old age.
How does a high IQ preclude you from that?
Because it leads to atheism.
No, so
it's
see what
correlated
I mean?
with atheism.
So here, let me show you the circle. Hang on, let me just show you the circular argument.
I'm making an independent argument.
Yeah,
for
I know,
why
but let me show you the
these
circularity.
values are important.
Can I show you the circularity here?
Okay,
So your circularity of your argument is like this: having a lower IQ for me somehow means what? That I'm going to suddenly have better ethics? I'm going to suddenly be a better person? I'm going to suddenly be more benevolent?
Yeah,
you
there's a
haven't.
correlation,
Hang on. You haven't demonstrated that that's the case. And by the way, I would argue, in fact, Christian ethics are so overwhelmingly good that secularists who have no ethical system borrow ours. And so the thing is like, look, ultimately, you haven't made an argument. The circularity of your argument is just this. Look, you need to have a lower IQ. Well, how does that help our people group defend itself if we do? Well, it doesn't, but there's other values more important. Okay, does a higher IQ preclude you from that? Answer, no. No. So that's the problem with the circularity, dude, that I'd actually like an answer to. And then, to be fair, because this wasn't a back and forth, I'm willing to answer yours directly, too.
Well, excuse me, sorry. Can I get water, James, actually? I can't really, my throat is pretty dry here. So there is like a negative correlation between IQ and religiosity. There is a negative correlation with IQ because as you get higher IQ, you can go read Jonathan Haidt, for example. You can read Joseph Heinrich, for example. And in their books, they point to how higher IQ is correlated with more liberalization, more secularization, more atheism, more freedom for all, which causes the kind of degeneracy that you and I speak out against. So there is actually a bad consequence to a population with higher IQ because you'll get more atheism. So that's one problem that you can point out. And I'm just saying that, look, let's not be IQ fetishists. Even if you think cousin marriage is degenerate, disgusting, you're fine. But still, higher IQ does not correlate with better societies. It's leading to a problem that is unsolvable. Okay, this is a problem of higher and higher technologies that's going to cause us to live in a dystopia, a transhumanist dystopia. That is a problem for everyone. It's not like an own against the Muslims. It's an own against the human race. Peter Thiel, with his ugly, smug face, is laughing at us, at Christians, at Muslims. They're laughing because they have this demonic antichrist future that they're planning for us. And it is based on technology.
Yeah, but this doesn't really respond again to the argument. The question here, when you say that it is true that IQ can have correlates to atheism, but we were talking about societies reverting to the IQ mean, the mean. The mean IQ of the societies you produce, sir, are between 1 to 2 standard deviations lower than the average Christian nation. The mean. Now, there is no correlate that Daniel will be able to show you that having average IQs leads to secularism. It doesn't. It doesn't. Show me the correlate if that's the case. You can't. And the average IQs in these nations, which is just between 100 to 115 professionals, middle management, it doesn't preclude them at all, or doesn't force them to secularism at all. We're talking about the means of society. The mean IQ of 2 standard deviations lower in many cases precludes you from having any sort of civilization, really. It really does. just basic infrastructure and things like this. So Daniel would need to show you how having a 100 IQ, an average IQ, is going to lead everybody to secularism because societies revert to the mean. It doesn't. It doesn't lead to secularism. It's a lie. You have to have these higher IQs, much higher. Otherwise demonstrate it. And if he can, even let's just say he could somehow, then his prescription is actually just that he wants to keep the world at 70 IQ. That's crazy. There is nothing which precludes Christian ethics from people groups that have average IQs or even above average IQs. And there's plenty of smart people, by the way, who are Christians. Now, to kind of hone in on that argument, just remember this. Secularists, these really high IQ secularists, they've never been able to find a system of ethics ever that's better than Christianity, which is why they adopt it. So just pointing that out.
We're going to give Daniel the last 90-second response. Then we're going to jump into the Q&A. The floor is yours, Daniel.
Yeah, so the 100 average IQ, that's in the modern period after secularization has taken place. There's a Flynn effect. If you look at the IQ in the world, the average was below 100. The average IQ globally was around 80 in Christian societies and Muslim societies. That was the global average. Secularization is through like secular education and the Flynn effect. This is what has increased IQ so that the average is now at 100. So again, like if you need 100 IQ average to be successful, then you're basically saying all of Christendom has been a failure. Like somehow they are able to have an empire, like a Christian empire, throughout history, despite being 2 standard deviations lower in IQ than current day averages. Your argument is really self-defeating in so many ways. And again, like I have to say that, I think this is a problem that is the problem of transhumanism is affecting the entire world, Muslims and Christians, and we really have to come up with a solution. We can't just keep praising this idea of technology and IQ because that plays into the hands of the people that want to destroy the human race. They want to literally usher in the Antichrist. So let's try to take the bigger picture in mind. Rather than trying to own each other with arguments that are self-defeating.
We're going to jump into the Q&A. Folks, if you have a question, line up in the middle aisle, and we'll get to your question in just a moment. And then, Sean, if you can turn me up. Thanks so much, Sean. Sean! All right, thank you very much. I'm just teasing Sean. Sean's the man. Yeah, come on up here. And then I do want to remind you folks is that we'd like to keep the questions on the topic. So we don't want questions that are going to, to be personal attacks or even things that are off topic, trying to just get under people's skin. The debaters work their asses off. We really do appreciate them. So we want to give them the proper respect. We'll have the first question be from Rachel Wilson. I have to hold it. Wait, one last thing. Oh, is that none of this, I have 2 questions business. We only do 1 question at a time, and I got to hold it just to be sure nobody tries any filibustering.
All right, so my question for Daniel is, I don't know if you're aware, you kind of gave the game away where you kind of stated that the Muslim plan is to infiltrate Western countries and kind of outbreed us, right? If you can't beat them, outbreed them. But I don't know if you're aware of the fact that when Muslims emigrate to Western nations, they still marry their cousins at about the same rate, but within 1 to 2 generations, their birth rate is just about on par with all of us in the West. So how's that going to turn out for you guys, do you think?
I think you're referring to like another debate. It's another debate that I had with a white nationalist. And the white nationalist was kind of making this might makes right argument as well, that the white nations are going to dominate the Muslim nations. And I said, look, if might makes right, then you don't have really a kind of moral argument against immigration. The Muslims who are immigrating can also make a might makes right that, okay, fine, if you are going to use all your weapons against us, Muslims, well, we're going to use birth rates against you. So it was really a response, like, I don't want to have war with the world. I don't want to have infiltration to take, but if that's the standard that we're going to have for everyone, like, okay, whoever's the strongest, if you're not strong enough, we're going to genocide you. Okay, if that's the standard that we're operating under, then Muslims are going to have to try to survive like any other peoples would.
So my question's actually for Andrew, but I would like to hear your response as well, Daniel. Andrew, I'm sure you're familiar, but we have this tradition in the West where the man typically goes to the father and asks for the daughter's hand in marriage. If your nephew came up to you asking this, would you permit it?
No.
Daniel?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Your nephew, can you repeat that?
So we have this tradition in the West where the man who wants to marry a lady goes to the father asking for the daughter's hand in marriage. So if your nephew came to you with this request, would you permit it?
Yeah, I'd consider it, yeah.
Thank you.
I consider it depending on qualities I'd have, yeah. I mean, this is something, if Jesus was also like the church fathers living,
Folks,
at the early centuries.
Folks, I do want to ask, just so the other people that are listening to the speaker can hear, I just want to ask if you could keep the conversations down to a minimum.
Yeah, so as I was saying, in the early periods of Christianity, if some Christian father was asked, can I marry your daughter? A nephew comes and asks, he would also say yes. It was only later in Christian history that was considered to be incest and was outlawed. And actually, what the outlaw of cousin marriage didn't extend just to first cousins. I don't know if you realize this. It extended to second, third, fourth, all the way to seventh cousin. That's how much the church, for some reason, decided and decreed that we don't want any kind of cousin marriage. But that had a big impact on the size of the average family size. It had a big impact on religiosity and all kinds of other factors. I highly recommend you read the book of Joseph Heinrich, who has a thick volume talking about this. He actually makes an argument that cousin marriage is associated with the rise, banning cousin marriage is associated with the rise of technology and IQ. So it's right up Andrew's alley, but this is not necessarily a good thing for the reasons that I explained.
Ready for you.
This one's for Daniel. Andrew has established that at the beginning of the debate, the causative chain to lower IQ is inbreeding. Now, the inductive case is going to be Islam both allows and often promotes inbreeding that's causing lower IQ. What in Christianity is causing them to be a lower IQ so that we can compare these two?
Well, one example that I gave in the debate is interracial marriage. So interracial marriage can also contribute to lower IQ. If anything that lowers IQ is something that's bad, then Christians and Andrew should be against interracial marriage as well. That's one example. He didn't really respond to that, but that's another thing highly associated with lower IQ. Also education. Secular education is associated with higher IQ. Religious education is correlated with lower IQ. So you'd also have to insist that people go to secular education instead of religious education if your only priority or your main priority was increasing the IQ within society.
Well, but that's not the main priority, right? The idea isn't that, the idea is not that this is the main priority. The idea instead is which one makes for better societies, and we can point to a correlate for why their societies are not better. He keeps on strawmanning the position and saying, this is the only thing you care about. It's not. It's not.
My question is for you, Daniel. Using and maintaining AI requires a massive energy source and infrastructure in order to be used. If Muslims plan to use AI to make up for your retarded nations, how do you plan to implement the infrastructure and build the necessary power to use AI when you can't even build your own technology? You buy it from middle management nations. And by middle management nations, in this case, you might not understand, I mean high IQ nations.
Here, let me paint you a picture there. So you have your high IQ nations, and they have the AI, and they have their power sources, and you have the Neuralink, and everyone is plugged into the cloud, and you're plugged into the masturbation machine with your nonstop virtual AI porn that you're addicted to, and that dopamine is surging. You're in a constant state of euphoria. And then guess what? The Muslims, the low IQ idiot Muslims that have been living in the desert with their donkeys, they're going to come and they're going to slaughter all of these people hooked up to the masturbation machine. They won't even be able to stand on their two legs because their legs have atrophied to such an extent that they can't even walk. That's the future of the West. That's the future of the high IQ. The horde, the biomass of Muslims are going to come with their swords because they don't have the high IQ necessary to actually develop guns and manufacture them en masse. They're going to come and slaughter all of the high IQ geniuses. That's a kind of future, right? right?
I think there's one clarification.
Clarification. So I wasn't talking about like how we get to where AI is or what you're planning to do with it. You said you were going to implement AI to combat. So how are you going to utilize or build these infrastructures for the AI? That was my question. If you don't know how to.
No, the point was that you can have nations that give access to Muslims that are not aligned with the West. So China, for example, has its own IQ or AI facilities that they can provide as a way to battle Western hegemony. And you have contracts that exist between China and these Muslim countries for energy. Like, where is China getting its energy? It's not mainly coming from mainland China. They're getting it from the Middle East, from Muslim countries. Okay, so there is a quid pro quo economic agreement to give access to those technologies to Muslim nations.
Hi. So unfortunately for you, I am the Andrew Wilson of AI debates. And here I am before you asking you this very simple question. Since you like AI, and you know about Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Neuralink, you surely know that AI is a prerequisite to transhumanism. So here you are promoting AI as an IQ equalizer, which, by the way, looking at the charts of IQ that AI has as it has been tested, in the last 20 years has outperformed Muslim countries for the last 1,400 years. Carrying on, as AI gets better, there's going to come a point where, say, AI decides that your countries don't need to exist anymore. It can take over your energy. Can you give me the list of names of the donkeys you would use to fight this transhumanist AI?
Yeah, look at this guy. Like, did people see you? All of these dysgenic people come to the debates, James, and the guy is like not even 100 pounds, and he's talking big as if like this is some like great point that he's made, great point that he's made about AI. AI is going to wipe you out. The entire point.
All right, hold on 1 second.
I know that you're upset.
We have to hold on 1 second. We just. All right. The questioner jabbed, so Daniel's going to jab a little back. We got to give him a chance to speak, though. We have to be able to hear him.
They can't handle it, James. They can't handle me to mock them. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, the kind of technology that's being developed is going to destroy all of humanity, not just Muslims. I know you have a fetish for seeing brown people being exterminated. Maybe, I don't know. It looked like you were pretty excited there. about other people being exterminated, but the wider point was that technology is also going to come for you. Maybe not you. Maybe you're in bed with the Peter Thiels of the world, but for the rest of normal people around us, they hate people like you. They view you as these transhumanists who only care about progress at the cost of human life. So you're actually hated by the vast majority of human beings in the world, including Christians.
We have to wrap up due to we have had a fantastic debate. So first, before I go on with any housekeeping stuff, I want to say please join me in giving a round of applause for our speakers. With that, I want to say thank you very much, folks, for being here with us tonight. If you have any questions, please ask Bob or I. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your night.